Thankfully, Cenk, as we talk about how these four presidential candidates, Walker, Paul, Cruz, and Rubio, have dropped to their knees to pleasure the Koch brothers and their friends, thankfully, the media is there to make it clear, to point out to the American public what's really going on here, that this nearly $900 million, nearly $1 billion, could be $1 billion by the time they're done, fairly easily, the dangers that poses to the American people. So Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, they went over the weekend to the Ritz Rancho Mirage, and they let the Kochs have it when they hit the air Monday morning.
We got to break. We need to talk about our weekend.
Oh, it was awesome.
So we actually went out to Palm Springs, where Charles and David Koch have their winter meeting. John Carl was out there as well. We saw a lot of presidential candidates running around, and it was a pretty remarkable event.
That's interesting. Apparently they had, quote, an awesome time, and that it was a remarkable event.
So you heard
all-you-can-eat shrimp.
Remarkable event. We have a longer clip to play of Scarborough talking about it, where the number of either untruths or lies or just getting his information wrong is really staggering. But he says remarkable twice more. So we had 2 minutes and 5 seconds in it, and Joe Scarborough felt it was important to tell us that the Kochs were remarkable 3 times.
Well, if
125 seconds 3 times.
If they're putting you up at the Ritz-Carlton for a whole weekend and all the other things that come along with it, you know, if Scarborough runs for office again, you think the Kochs might throw a couple of dollars his way, and all the other issues that involve money in politics, money in media, et cetera. I mean, these guys are knee deep in it. They're bathing in it. So Mika and Joe are taking a little stroll in that Koch pool.
But wait till you hear from Willie Geist, and Mark Halpern's there. I don't think he says anything, and Jonathan Karl, and they're all like, oh, it was awesome. It was great. Yeah. I mean, no one says what needs to be said. Here's JR put this together. Here's the next minute and 50 seconds of Joe Scarborough, one of the good Republicans, embarrassing himself.
And the most remarkable thing was what they were talking about. You know, I sat and talked to Charles a good bit. Charles Koch a good bit. He was obsessed about, well, just what I said and what I've been saying for some time. Income disparity and mainly crony capitalism. And anybody that thinks that they're loyal, faithful Republicans have never talked to them for more than 3 minutes.
They're libertarian.
They're libertarians. They loathe, even though they did not say this to me, they have no use for people that want to go out and, you know, have these huge bloody battles on social issues. And,
they're a little anti-establishment.
They're anti-establishment. Yeah. And the first thing Charles said to me when he saw me was he picked out a specific Republican bill. I said, how are things going? He goes, well, you know, look what they're passing in Washington. Yeah. You know, they're giving tax subsidies to Hollywood. They're giving tax subsidies to Wall Street. They're giving tax. I mean, this guy is what my good buddy Charlie Hilton would call a true believer. And he's got no use for Republicans that support corporate welfare and no use for Democrats. It's pretty remarkable. Anybody that, I mean, they have been painted as cartoon characters that they're just
definitely not what you think.
Now listen, they believe in the freedom agenda. They believe in low taxes. They believe in low regulations. They are libertarians. They don't want the federal government in your pocketbook, but they also don't want them in your bedroom. They're like I think most Americans. But very interesting. And Willie, David, of course, we were talking about what he's done in New York and the Upper West Side, and you know, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, there aren't many museums or concert halls you can walk into in Manhattan that don't have their names on the side.
Or hospitals.
And medical facilities.
Or hospitals, cancer research, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they're great. They're awesome. All right, let's all high-five each other. That's great. All of them. Halpern, Willie Geist, I don't know who that woman was, and Mika and Joe.
Yeah, so I do declare there are no museums or concert halls you can attend in Manhattan without the Koch brothers' names on it, and we all do love the concert halls in Manhattan. And when we go with our, what do they call those things? The
opera glasses?
No.
Monocles?
Monocles. When we all go with our monocles to the play, well, it's just bloody brilliant that the Koch brothers have put that together for us.
Remarkable.
Remarkable, really, remarkable. Okay, let's just break this down a little bit. So, the freedom agenda. The freedom agenda. Oh, I see. So, when
By the way, real quick, the efforts that the Koch, when they raise this money, it's actually overseen by the Freedom Partners Chamber of Commerce, a nonprofit that organized the Rancho Mirage event. There's no nonprofit that organizes an event at the Ritz in Rancho Mirage. Like, that's not
the whole point is profit.
It's not a nonprofit that like feeds people or gets women in danger help. Like, it's not a real nonprofit.
So the Freedom Agenda believes in lower taxes. Now, also in that segment, they talked about how the Koch brothers are really bothered by income inequality.
Disparity, he said, yeah.
No, but wait. When you cut taxes on billionaires, I'm pretty sure that contributes to income inequality. I'm pretty certain that the math on that is solid. And look, in this country,
they're concerned about it. It's not quite enough.
Yeah,
the disparity is too narrow.
That's their concern. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So in this country, we did have a time when we actually did have a golden age, and conservatives even say it was a golden age, 1950s, 1960s, et cetera, where productivity was fantastic, wage growth was fantastic, income inequality wasn't that bad. Believe it or not, go look back at the history of that and the facts behind that. And the top marginal tax rate varied between 70 to 90%. Okay, that's how you get to income equality and growth. Number one economy in the world at that time. You know why? Because and it's not 90% of everybody's money. It's the very, very top of the top. Meaning that if you're making I think the dollars today would be like $4 million a year. At that point, it kicks to 70 to 90% of your income for every dollar above that.
And,
right?
and nobody paid that, by the way.
Yeah,
right.
Because very few people, tiny amount were in that
But even
bracket.
so, the real, what they actually paid, what's the phrase that people use?
Effective income
The
tax.
effective income tax was still much lower. There were always tons of loopholes for those people to shield their money.
Now the capital gains rate are comically low. All these, and especially the taxes that apply to the rich, are even lower than apply to the average guy. Because, I did investments, so you're supposed to incentivize them. They have $40 billion apiece, Charles and David Koch. They don't need any further incentive to invest their money. Of course they're going to invest their money, right?
If I had $42 billion, I'd think about hiring some guys.
Okay. So when they talk about this nonsense that, they're against crony capitalism, they're anti-establishment. Come on, man. Are you kidding me?
That was my favorite part, the anti-establishment.
Are the establishment. It's the top richest guys in the country going to the Ritz-Carlton, giving $900 million in campaign donations so that they can buy themselves deregulation, so they can buy themselves lower wages for their workers, so they can buy themselves lower taxes. And they're anti-establishment. Who the fuck is the establishment?
You know, sometime this year, Cenk, somebody on TV, maybe MSNBC, is going to use an inappropriate word to describe a black guy or a gay person or something, and it's going to cost him his job. We all know that's going to happen somewhere, right? And whatever that is, it won't be 1/10 as egregious as what Joe Scarborough just did. Joe Scarborough should lose his job immediately. This is a critically important story for Americans to understand. And not only did he cover it in a boneheaded, ignorant way, he literally repeated their talking points. He did exactly what they would have wanted him to do. They invited him there so he would turn around and say, and go on the air and say, these guys are anti-establishment libertarians. He essentially said, the guys with $40 billion each who are buying elections around the country are just like me and you. And Joe Scarborough trotted that out, and Willie Geist and Mark Halperin and Mika Brzezinski either added to it or just nodded in agreement.
Yeah, and
that's what you should lose your job for if you work in journalism.
This is supposed to be the progressive network on television.
That's right.
And he does 3 hours in the morning. He has a 3-hour block where he does this dribble. By going to the Ritz-Carlton to have his expenses paid for, et cetera, he essentially got paid. I remember when I was at MSNBC, they called around in a panic because Keith Olbermann had given a nickel and a dime to some politician.
They got on Keith. They suspended Keith Olbermann.
They suspended him. They asked me questions. Have you ever given to a politician? These guys went and stayed at the villas and the Ritz-Carltons, et cetera, of the guys who have bought all the politicians.
And they went on the air and repeated their talking points. You should be fired today. You shouldn't be allowed to go on the air tomorrow. It's unbelievable.
This is the progressive alternative on television. You wonder why people don't trust television anymore. So this is insanity. I wonder if there's an answer for it, though. Wolfpack, man. I'm telling you, man. You think these guys are going to do it on their own? You think that the Mark Halperins and the Joe Scarboroughs and all these and the politicians who are going there to pleasure the Kochs? At one point, Ted Cruz said, "I admire Charles and David Koch." I bet you do. I bet you do. You admire them looking up at them like, "Hey, I admire you." Okay, so you think those guys are going to fix the system? They're not going to fix it. You got to go to their house and you got to kick the door down. wolf-pack.com. Come kick it down with me.
Last thing before we go, because it's important to note that the last lie that Joe Scarborough told on behalf of the Koch brothers that should cost him his job. They want the government out of the boardroom and the bedroom. He didn't say the boardroom, but your pocketbook and the bedroom, right? Mm-hmm. So let's remember that. And then this is from Think Progress. While David Koch, this is number 26, while David Koch has publicly supported marriage equality, the duo's political network has almost entirely worked to elect social conservatives who oppose LGBT equality, abortion rights, and access to birth control. Continuing to 27, the Kochs have also spent their money to degrade environmental regulations, workplace safety, and labor protection safeguards that polls suggest, indicate, prove that most Americans want. So to suggest that these guys are on the side of average Americans, there's no greater sin in journalism than what he just did. None greater.
Yeah, and so on a similar point, to say that these guys don't want to be in your bedrooms, but they give more money than anyone else, the politicians who are number one job is to get in your bedrooms, whether it's abortion or it's any of those reproductive rights issues or the issue of marriage equality, gay civil rights, etc. So then David Koch comes out in an interview with Barbara Walters, another puff piece, and he says, "Oh, what? I got no problems with gay. I'm for gay marriage,
sure,
right? I mean, I've given hundreds of millions of dollars to people who crushed it for decades, but I'm theoretically for it." And Barbara Walters lets him get away with it. Joe Scarborough does his job for him. He's literally his mouthpiece. And these guys are, I mean, you want to talk about grotesque, the word that Ted Cruz mentioned, that's grotesque, right? And here is corruption at its finest. And finally, from my point of view, Joe Scarborough said, anyone who's spent 3 minutes with the Koch brothers will tell you, I can't believe anybody would say that they're pro-Republican. Well, okay, two things on that. First of all, if they're not pro-Republican, they got a funny way of showing it since they have literally given billions over this set of elections, billions of dollars to exclusively the Republican Party.
Yeah, somebody should tell Marco Rubio, Scott Walker, Rand Paul, and Ted Cruz this.
Yeah, they're not pro-Republican. Yeah. I wonder why all the Republican presidential candidates showed up. And then number two, Joe, no, we don't get to spend 3 minutes with the Koch brothers. Okay, the average guy doesn't get to, I can't believe Joe from Nebraska. I mean, if you'd spent 3 minutes with the Koch brothers, you would know. Who does that? You do that because they need to buy you off, so you say their bullshit on air, which you just oblige them. That's why you got to spend 3 minutes with them. They're billionaires. They're not spending time with the frickin' masses.
Yeah, and so you know what the masses should do is something that Joe Scarborough doesn't understand, never understood, couldn't possibly understand. Odd that he has a job at a network that espouses to do journalism. The rest of us not being able to spend 3 minutes with the Koch brothers, we just follow the money. We follow that $2 billion, what will now be almost certainly $3 billion by the conclusion of the 2016 elections. Follow the money, you know who the Koch brothers are.